Start recording now. Um, Wonderful. Yeah. And what I'm going to do, my name's Hazel, for those of you who are just joining the recording. Thank you so much for joining us, those of you who are here with us. Um, Super excited today to have Andrew, the creator of Library Extension, who has so very kindly agreed to chat with us about his amazing tool. I sent off a bunch of questions to begin with, and he was so kind to take a look at them. And some of those questions we asked both the Lot Mutual Aid Listserv and the Library of Things Mutual Aid Group, both of which are Google groups, which are free for anyone to join. So please feel free to join anyone. If they had any questions, and people came back with some other questions. So we'll definitely ask those. And Andrew, it's okay. You don't have to know the answers. We don't always either. But really, this is just meant to be a friendly, kind conversation about some do-gooders and folks who want to do more good together. So, Andrew, thank you so much for coming here today and everything you've done. Uh, on that note, I'm going to pin you here and I'm going to monitor chat for other questions for anyone else who wants to chime in. Again, I don't want to monopolize you, but I think something that would be really helpful to get us all on the same page is, would you mind talking a little bit about Library Extension and how you created it, what your story is?
I'd love to. So thank you so very much for the invitation to come and chat with your group and to kind of talk about this tool that I built and I'm pretty passionate about myself. Um, I really built it about 12 years ago. I do remember it was a weekend and I woke up one morning and I was like I wanted to read something and at the time I live in the Pacific Northwest and I'm blessed with some incredible library systems. Seattle Public Library and King County Library systems are phenomenal systems. Um, but there's more than one. There's more than one place to look for stuff. So that was
Yep.
kind of little, little thing that bothered me, and I wanted to find a way to find things. And in early in my career, I actually worked at Amazon, so I was very familiar with one of their primary goals was being making discovery easy, and that's what they really excelled at was finding items on their platform. And so I decided, well, I would love to be able to go through this, be able to like find recommendations and things like that, but be able to know what my library has. Like, I don't want to buy every book. I like to read, though I don't have much time, and I'll get into why I don't have much time, but it comes down to four children that really monopolize my time. Um, a- and I didn't want to buy every single book, especially when there are such great resources nearby that often will have them. And so I started out just like looking as like, well, I know computers. I've been, this is my career and everything else. I started looking at how the catalog searches online worked. And at the time, King County System was using, I think, an Evergreen platform, which was a little bit slow and a little bit clunky to use at the time. We're talking 12 years ago, so things have changed quite a bit across the entire spectrum since then. And so I started kind of looking at it and like figuring, well, there's some basic things going on here, and I can, extract this piece of data and do a search here. And soon enough, I had this little prototype for myself, and I was using it. And for some reason, I have no idea why, but I posted it on the Google Chrome store, and lacking a lot of creativity, I just named it a library extension, thinking that I was being ever so clever and that it's this like extension of the library and things like that. So um, it really came down to me. I have this kind of personal thesis that discovery remains an unsolved problem. People don't really have great abilities to discover all the things around them and what they need to do. And I was trying to solve this in my own little way of like, I have access to libraries. This is a resource that I have access to that I pay tax dollars to support and everything else. I should be able to have better visibility into when I can utilize the tools that they provide. And so I built this, started building it out and extending and figuring out, hey, it's not just this my one library that uses this, a whole bunch of other libraries use this catalog. And so I could do that and then started building it out from there to the digital collections, the overdrives, and the 3Ms or cloud libraries, as the name has changed over the years, and things like that. And just started building out. I think now there's 30 plus different catalog systems that the tool knows how to kind of interact with in different ways, and return back results and try to display them on several dozen different sites. It's not everything everywhere, but it tries to be reasonably meaningful when it can be. and it really is just a tool that I kind of build in my spare time. It's kind of my passion project. I also use it as a way to like learn about new approaches and technologies. The the code has not always followed the best, highest quality standards, being something that started out as a little weekend project for myself. And so it's not necessarily the same as what I would build in my day job. But I do try to bring it slowly up to higher standards and things like that when I have time. So um, that's kind of the super high level. If you have any questions beyond that, please send them my way. I'm happy to help and answer anything and provide any kind of insights into my thinking and what the tool does and why I've made certain choices or anything like that.
So I just want to call this out that you decided one morning, wishing there was something that just in your spare time, you were going to code this library extension for free and then share it with the world. And so this tool that so many of us love is a passion project that you don't get any funding for, that you're just doing as a volunteer, and yet it works with so many different options.
I do appreciate when people I hopefully there's
Woohoo!
an opportunity for people to support the work and I won't lie when
Yeah.
people click those buttons it kind of motivates me a little bit more to do a little bit more. Um, but one of the things that I've kind of decided for myself is that this is a useful tool for everybody, and I don't want to put in a gate around it that would prevent the people that might benefit the most from it, even though that's an imperfect argument because people most likely to have access to systems are those who are going to be in better situations anyways. But I
Yeah.
want to have the opportunity for, increasingly computers are, ubiquitous. They're around us everywhere. Someday I will be able to do better support for mobile types of devices, hopefully, and just make this available to everybody because it's a common good. I view this as a common good for the most part.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, if I find a wonderful benefactor, I'll let you know because this is something that we'd all like to see more of, and which is why we're on this call. So thank you so much for taking that first step to kind of make this happen. Which is why many of us are on this call too. We're taking our first steps in different ways and trying to level up together. So yay, all in good company. So this group that you're talking to, not only do they lend books and tend to be librarians of some sort or developers, they also tend to lend things. So we're going to get into that because I think that's um, interesting to think about. You've really changed the game on the library front. Like I can just search the web and all of a sudden you make it really easy to find library books. So what if we could harness your technology for in other ways? But before we do that, um, I think it's important to really understand how your extension works. So right now, and I'm going to try to explain, and then I'd love to have you correct me when I fail. Right now, what I can do is I can download library extension in my browser and I search for I can search for an item in my browser and then it says, oh, you can get it at this local library or this local library. And sometimes it has more integration with that local library and sometimes it has less integration with that local library. Are libraries working with you to support that, or is this something you're coming up with all on your own?
It's largely all on my own.
Wow.
Um, give a little more context. I've actually taken a very intentional um, approach to, I try to collect as little information and data from users as possible. So
Yeah.
the extension largely is self-contained. The exception to that is that I run a little server and it has the constant updates for the configurations for the library. So about the only meaningful information I get is every little bit, every one of these extensions wants to call home and say, "Hey, are there any updates to my library?" And that's how I get updates pushed out to everybody as quickly as I possibly can. But beyond that, all of the interactions with the extension are from the user's browser to the catalog, the library catalog. So, and I should do a better job of explaining that to users that the entirety of that conversation depends on the various privacy policies between,
Just gonna mute someone here. Hold on just a minute, Andrew. Sometimes some people mute. Mute. There we go. Sometimes folks walk in or someone's on desk.
So,
So,
so what it does is it effectively, if you land on a known type of a page that it knows where to find some information about, and usually there's a minimum that it needs to be able to find an author and a title in some way, shape, or form. If
Yeah.
it identifies that that's a valid page, it'll go and it'll then make requests to the library catalogs in turn and say, hey, do you have any of this title? And then tries to do some matching on the author. That's really the extent of what's going on in the back end. Then back and forth, it's trying to collect availability information if it has that capability or anything else like that, and then filter out some close matches whenever possible. And when it can't make a good decision, it returns everything back with as much information as I can display on there just to try and let the user distinguish between the different things that are available. But it really tries to act as an extension of the user themselves of what they would do if they were like, well, if I'm remembering to go, I'm going to go and I'm going to search for this title on all of these different catalog sites and then have to read through the results myself. This tries to kind of do all of that for them on that one page and then just links them back out to the catalog so that whatever operations they need to do, they can do directly with the catalog.
So that's fascinating on multiple levels. And yes, thank you for caring about privacy. And so we all do too. um, so, so that means not only when you're on Amazon and Goodreads, but whatever it is, Abe, Pals, Indigo, Chapters, or if I had like my own blog post of these are the books I wish I wanted to read, because you're working with my browser, you could look at that potentially, and it
Potentially.
might, and no guarantees, I recognize.
Right now, it's very tied to site, so it has to
Got
match
it.
match an exact site because it doesn't know how to just find things arbitrarily on a page. It doesn't have any other concept or know how even to navigate through pages that'll have multiple items very effectively. So all of that has to kind of be hand coded today because the pages
Got it.
are often designed. They're often designed now for visual representation, not necessarily navigation at the code level.
So you're going and then looking at, oh, I'd like to add Indigo chapters, or oh, I'd like to add, and then you're saying, oh, they do title and author like
I can see,
this.
this is how I find it on the page, and then this is how I
Yeah.
find it on the page, and then I can bundle that together and send it to there's two components. There's like the front component that runs on the website that you're on, and there's a backend component that's running in the browser that can go off and make the requests.
Yeah. So it is data scraping, basically,
It is
correct?
data
Yeah.
scraping. Some 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 results that we get back are also data scraping, and some of them are a little more structured, so it's able to just kind of parse through results depending on what it is.
Cool. Cool. Well, that's exciting. So, and then the other thing that I thought was exciting that you said is you weren't actually using kind of the number unique identifiers for books. You're using title and author.
Yeah, so I used to focus more on trying to find the ISBN or ISBN 13 values from the various pages and search for those. But it turned out in a lot of cases they either wouldn't match or there's various editions and like all the mismatches that as people that work in the industry it's difficult to
Mm-hmm.
actually say this item here is exactly this item here or it's close enough to this item here. Those are very difficult problems. I don't think I've solved them by any stretch of the imagination. If you go beyond that, titles tended to be better. It's imperfect because even that is, as you will know, incredibly varied in terms of what a title comes up as on one site versus what might be in a catalog system somewhere else. Even the formation of authors, sometimes you get an author name, sometimes you get initials, sometimes you get variations or you have multiple attributions. So it becomes interesting sometimes to try and narrow things down appropriately.
Is it a real pain to keep this up to date? Isn't like, I don't know if one of these websites does a redo, then does it always, it can often mess up your code and you'd have to go back in to teach it how to data scrape again, right?
Uh, I mean, there's a little bit of work, but it tends to just be kind of because I have it all boiled down to, find this on the screen and know how to search through the backend HTML or
Yeah.
however it happens to be doing it. It's not a difficult thing. It's more just I have to be told about it because I don't have any proactive monitoring, more because I just haven't set it up than anything else, but it's not automatically going out there and looking for it. There's also a challenge that increasingly these sites are making it more challenging to do any kind of automated validation. They'll throw up the bot checkers, and certainly in our current world where everyone wants to make sure it's as much a human as possible, they try to make sure it's not it works great in many cases with the web browser that
Yeah.
the user is working on. Not 100%. We can talk more about some of those fun challenges that I've encountered, but have received incredibly receptive responses from whenever I've reached out to library consortiums and groups.
Awesome. I'm glad you're getting positive responses. So on that note, as you should, you're doing this for fun. You also have a day job and kids. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. So again, on this note, you're seeming to make it work, the scraping on one side, and then are you, and again, I just want to stay on this side and then we'll go to the next side. So for grabbing this data, do you have to, are you doing any in collaboration with some of these larger consortiums, or is it really just because of the way your tool set up, it's just easy to scrape from?
It's really just easy to scrape from the
Yeah.
majority of the time. Most, especially a lot of the newer platforms, they
Hmm.
return back well-structured data. So usually it's like a JSON format or an XML format, and that becomes
Yeah.
really easy to get the results from after I do an initial search. There are hoops to jump through. Some are difficult or next to impossible to really deal with, or await responses. I've got outstanding requests for help to talk to OCLC, for example. They seem to be on the slower end of trying to follow up. But when I've actually reached out to various consortiums recently, most of them have been using variations of the Viewfinder Aspen systems right now. They're incredibly responsive and willing to work with whatever is going on. And most of those cases have been, hey, we've put up these blocking rules to prevent automated scanning of our catalogs and everything else. And so I've worked with them for them to accurately identify when it's the library extension making the request, and they allow those requests through.
So you have a bunch of sources, mostly North America based, or are you going over to Europe? Do you also, in addition to all these talents, like speak Mandarin and you're doing it in Mandarin too? Like, tell me more about the width.
Um, Primarily, I've been most comfortable in English speaking because I can
Yeah.
understand what's going on in the various elements there. I do
Yeah.
have some others around the world, and I've had a long set of requests for certainly a lot of German catalogs, which seem to kind of be off in their own worlds. What I've
Cool.
found most beneficial is if it's a system that is reused by lots of libraries, that's the easiest one to address because it kind of gets me the biggest bang for the effort there. And I can usually follow along what's going on screen and otherwise, and also validate whether it's a meaningful set of responses. Um, I'm not I'm not opposed to any particular implementations, but those have just been the ones that have been the easiest to do. It's really just a limitation of my capabilities.
Of course. Yeah. No, we're just, it's always curious and there's always more to do when it comes to cataloging, right? Um, wow. So once you scrape this data and you say, okay, look, we know that you're searching for this item, then you need to talk to, folks' local libraries. And that again, you're going to the libraries and just to be clear, you're scraping the library's catalog too, correct?
That's correct. Well,
Yeah.
effectively, yeah. Yeah. It's able to just make a request. It's, usually a straightforward request because if you can do it from the browser, it's not trying to get by any particular systems that aren't available. If it's available publicly, this will work with it. They're not trying any attempts to subvert any systems
Yeah.
whatsoever.
So the system has to be available to search online. So if the itty bitty library, like we have a lot here in Maine, and they don't have an online system, this is not going to work for them, obviously. Yeah, correct. Okay. What about something like if I cataloged my own library in like something like Library Thing or whatnot? Could you be like, oh yeah, you totally have that book in your collection and you forgot about it?
There would be nothing preventing it other than the implementation right now. So I
Got
think
it.
I've received some requests for it, and it's just been one of those things that hasn't made my list of things to get to. So yeah. But
Oh, of course. Yeah.
if it's something people have access to themselves, there's no reason we couldn't provide support for it. It's pretty wide open in terms of um, if you can do it with a web browser, you can
Yeah.
basically make the requests here. Now, that adds some interesting challenges at times, particularly in some of the more certainly in the current world of how web browsers have been changing how things work. It requires extra hoops to jump through in certain cases. I'm happy to get into the technical details of that, but if you've heard of the words
Yeah.
V3, that's really the core of some of those problems. Um, but if you can do it on a browser, that's really what I've made it out to. Ultimately, there would also be, people could ultimately build a system that would run local to their system, and the browser could still interact with that as well. Like there's really the sky's the limit because it's software, right? I like to think, if you can imagine it with software, you can, generally speaking, build it in some way, shape, or form. You just have to know kind of what your trade-offs are along the way.
I love it. That's spoken like a true developer, but like the open-minded social change type. How great. I love it. So, on that note, so impressive. What are some of the significant hurdles that you're dealing with as it stands, even though it's a pet volunteer project? Are there things that really are driving you nuts right now with this, or things that you're like, I wish this could happen, but
So my pet peeves are, every browser is just a little bit different, and so
Yep.
I have to build things that are different for Chrome versus Firefox versus Edge. And then on top of all of that, I would love to do Safari, but Apple really went off and they kind of did things in their own way, and I just haven't had the time to sit down and really learn that ecosystem. So we got a very, bifurcated environment around that. I made a mention earlier, Manifest v3. That's another example of a thing that kind of introduced a new way of making all of these requests and being able to do a bunch of things. And so where previously I had a reasonably simple, everything was straightforward to go, make a request and then actually figure out where on that page it is. That required a bunch of changes, and we're getting into very very detailed technical stuff. But I had to figure out how to do that within the confines of Manifest v3.
Yep.
And Firefox, for instance, still doesn't fully support it. Chrome does, but they don't. Or sorry, Chrome requires it, and Edge does it, but it doesn't. So it's like this kind of moving target along the way. Beyond that, it's just the difference between what I consider catalog platforms that were built really for with structured data and standardized requests versus those that either were built so long before kind of the current standards and best practices were introduced, or those that go out of their way to obfuscate and make all of this difficult because they're trying to keep it secret for good reasons, or otherwise. I guess it's perspective at it. Those are challenging. And similarly, you mentioned, when a site reskins itself or when they change out layouts, that can add some challenges. But I like to think of the fact that I've tried to break these down into discrete kind of problems. Fixing any one particular one is easy for the one thing. And so I don't have to rewrite the entire tool if one site changes their layout. I have a pretty clean way of saying, well, for this one site, I just have to know that this one value gets updated here, and now it can just work. It doesn't require rethinking everything. Same thing with various catalog implementations. Those don't generally change dramatically, is my experience over the
Yeah.
last decade. Is for the most part, the catalogs are pretty stable. Once a version is created, there's not a lot of change to the operation of it. What changes much more frequently is a particular library or consortium's implementation, and they'll swap between different things as contracts come up, and they need to address
Yep.
whatever needs are driving the need for changes, and just trying to get that updated. But again, that turns out to be, I am capable of receiving an email from somebody, and if I happen to be at my desk, I can within 1 minute have the update pushed out to all the users. So it turns out to be that I've narrowed it down, and as long as it's within the confines of the things that the system supports, I can get updates out very quickly.
That's awesome. It's awesome that you're willing to do that as
Mhm.
well. So that's amazing. So it it works really well as is, and it sounds like it's easier for you when it's web friendly systems. So
Mhm.
BibFrame, RFD, RDF, sorry,
Yeah.
RDF, web friendly systems. So that seems like where the standards of some of the more traditional library cataloging is headed to. Um, But so I guess now, you know, it's doing really well with books. Are you ever thinking of expanding? So ebooks, media, DVDs, does it work with those things now, or drum roll,
Yeah.
things?
So it'll work. It works well. I like to think it works pretty well with ebooks as well.
Yeah.
I like to use that for all the different things, and often audiobooks. Audiobooks fall into that same category there as well. If it's in the catalog and it kind of has a name author relationship, it'll do a pretty good job. That it does not as great a job with other medias, particularly DVDs and things like that, that might match up to a printed
Yeah.
material. And it can be really awkward if it's just there. I think there's a few pages on Amazon where I'll support like searching for movies, but they've redone those pages so often that I don't know how where it's at right now. Those ones get more challenging because again the matching becomes challenging. One of the
Uh-huh.
common queries I'll get is, "Hey, this thing the extension displayed this book, but this is not the book I wanted." And so it's a challenge of like either the title matches or the title was close enough. I try to go for I think a 51% match on the title. So if half of the words match in any order, it'll deem that a title. But then it also tries to use the authors as a secondary filter. If
Hmm.
there's no author in some cases in the bibliographical information on either side, either the library or on the site, that ends up bringing up a lot of bad matches and things like that, which are more challenging. And there is no magical knowledge of what an item is under the covers. Um,
Darn. We could
that's where
use that too if you find
ISBNs
it.
were useful to a point, but they became less useful because some catalogs didn't support them very well anymore. Or again, the print material or library versions wouldn't ever match up because they'd be a different item altogether.
Yeah, no, that's exactly I'm
It
so glad
really
you
varies on that.
wrestled with this and can share with us because some of us have been wrestling with this being like, okay, well, if we wanted to do such a thing, yeah,
Yeah, it's the name description, particularly I think you've been mentioning library of things, items and things like that. It becomes really challenging because maybe a hammer matters versus a hammer or something. I don't know what to what extent. I know there's tool libraries that are very common that would be all of this. But then you start getting into, well, the type of hammer actually matters a lot, right? Is it a framing hammer or is it a finishing hammer and things like that? And how do you disambiguate the two of them? Because even if I know my experience is, even if I'm on a website like the Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever else it might be, it takes a lot of work to try and actually filter through those because the search there is really fuzzy. The discovery there is really challenging, and you have to really focus in on visual identification often to see, is this the thing that's close to what I want? I don't have a good answer for how to deal with those ones. I have a little bit of stuff where I could do a better job of pulling in cover art that might be associated with results to help better
huh,
identify items. It's actually hidden in the extension. There's a little very hard to see little eye in the results that'll actually kind of show you a list of the things that matched or didn't match in some ways, but it doesn't work completely well. It depends on which catalogs I've been able to pull the cover art links in from. So. But that's been the real challenge is actually like matching which is actually the same item, particularly when we get into ambiguous naming or anything else like that. That's a big problem I encounter with the books is where you have a book that has a title or very simple one or two word title that becomes a common one for a lot of authors to use. And even worse when there's multiple authors that have some similarity in their name. Then you start to really get into funny situations.
no, absolutely. I think anyone on here is cringing with you, being like, yes, oh, yes, that one too. Oh, yep, been there. I certainly know we use alternative titles for every single item. We're often talking up to 10, and that's not even multilingual. Usually that's just in English, for, something like a sieve.
And in my case, often I'm limited to what results are returned back to any particular system. And so it's going to be far less than administrative access might have on the back end to look through or do those searches because it'll be
Right.
limited to what's intended for patron viewing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Not back end. So obviously there would be some challenges kind of moving forward and expanding this beyond books if we wanted to. But um with things as they are, do you have any, things that you're hoping to do with the library extension that are with books or are with not books? Or you're like, I would like to have summer with my family, so we're not going to do library extension until maybe when it starts to sleet. Then I'll
That's
play with that again.
that's right. Um, I really want to focus on for myself, just making this as comprehensive and then fitting in within the realms of what it is. I do want to like add more capabilities, like giving the users ability to within a browser search, select, and say I want to find this, right? So that they can identify what a title is, particularly if you're on a reading a newspaper article or something else like that, and they're doing a book review, things that are a little less standardized by far, being able to make that easier for users to do and reach out. And I have some prototypes underway. I just haven't gotten them far enough along to be releasing them for use right now. Beyond that, yeah, there's a big element of me trying to ration my time because, like I said, I've got my full-time role, I've got my family, that I do have other fun commitments in the community around here as well. It turns out I try to be one of these well-rounded individuals around here, so it's not just sitting in front of a computer, much as there are times where it is a lot of fun to build things and get a lot of satisfaction out of it.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah, good for you. I'm so proud. No, and just to be clear, I know you know this, but I want to be clear for everyone else watching. We are by no means asking
Oh,
poor Andrew to do anything with things. We're just so grateful that he created a tool that exists that we'd like to learn from it. And so, especially because wouldn't it be great if we were browsing the internet and we were going to Garrett Wade or Home Depot or Ace Hardware or whatever it is that we were looking for tools, and we did a DuckDuckGo or Google search and we said, I need a hammer, I need, or maybe I need a vacuum mulcher. One of my favorites, instead of a leaf blower, it leaf vacuums and then it mulches them, right? And instead of having all the things that come up that I could purchase, it said also available at your local library. Do you think, just with your knowledge that is so far beyond mine, do you think AI could get there or Google search could get there? Or do you think we're always going to need to create some sort of library extension? Or if I start to ask things in the right way, we could somehow get in between?
so I think that's a super interesting question. I think there's kind of two different intersections there with
Yeah.
AI being one thing and its own special thing. And I have all sorts of fun thoughts and experiences, especially more recently, both through some of my work and through my day job on that. Um, in terms of all the extension ends up being an easier way, I
Yeah.
feel, to get this accomplished because we're not trying to find a way to monetize it.
Yeah.
The Googles and all the other search engines, there needs to be a business case for them to do that, and that usually ends up being some sort of monetization. That's
Yeah.
my perspective on that particular element. So the extension route ends up being an easier one, but there's downsides to it, which is that it has to be a proactive decision for somebody to know about it and to install it and to do it. It doesn't just come as part of the thing, which is the benefit of all these wonderful search engines that just work for us. The trade-off being, of course, that you're trading off your personal information and search and everything else for these large companies who use that for their benefit, which is totally fair. On the AI front, I think it's really interesting. No doubt everybody has heard endless stories about AI and things like that, and myself included. And I would say, 3 months ago, I really had not touched it or dabbled with it at all. I was just a participant on the sidelines, seeing that there's a bunch of stuff going on, but I wasn't really getting into it at all. And then at work, I was asked, okay, we need you to kind of help figure out this because we want to figure this out because this is this great, 100x multiplier across the board. And
Hmm.
so through my day job, I started working with it and I started using it for some things to help me with the library extension. What I found is it's a phenomenal tool. It needs to be rigidly helped along because it doesn't have taste, it doesn't have flavor on its own. It will accomplish what it does based on what it's been trained on, and what it's been trained on is lots and lots of material that's been available out both in the public domain and otherwise as needed. Um, and that material ranges from really, really great to really, really terrible. And so you definitely get a garbage out approach to it there. So you can get really good things, but it's not going to solve all of your problems, and it's not going to necessarily solve them well, or it's not going to solve them in an elegant way, which maybe doesn't matter for certain problems. So it's really a matter of what you need to use it for as a tool to help solutions. In terms of using it for some of these search things, I think the underlying concepts become really interesting. The underlying math and everything else behind it, I think, has a lot of opportunity for doing that, because what it really is it ends up being this predictor of what's next. That's at the core, the AI engines that we talk about today, the LLMs, are really predictors of next tokens, the next thing. So given what came before it, what is the most likely next thing to come after it? With a little bit of forward and backward search, that I can try and actually make something come across as comprehensive or as legible. So um, for searching items, I think that there's an opportunity that it could, but whether it would do a good job, I don't know that yet. It really varies, because it is very dependent on all this other information and context to help sway. And depending on how much you get into the math of it, like it is these, as I've dug into it, it's these gigantic multi-vector, multi-dimensional vectors, and you're trying to nudge everything into these multi-directional vectors. And so it puts me back to my university courses and everything else, where I did not enjoy vector math, but that's what comes out of it all, these crazy vectors, and you're just trying to predict what the most likely next thing, given all these other influencers, is.
Amazing. Yeah, what a world we live in these days, right? Thank you for, opening up this window for some of us. We're always coming to in this too from different
Mhm.
arenas. A lot of these folks are mark experts, which, was way back, but how it's all intersecting now.
Exactly.
So, cool. Well, hey, everyone on this call, I just want to make sure please don't hesitate we're getting we're not going to keep um Andrew past the hour change because he's got stuff to do. Hopefully he's
Mhm.
going to go out and have some fun with friends or kids or whatever it is. But
School
or
barbecue
go
afternoon, back to school barbecue afternoon at my kids' school. So
Wonderful. Yay. So but we still have 15 minutes. He's been kind enough to share. So please don't hesitate to unmute or to put your questions in the chat, because we want to make sure that you are able to ask and get them answered. And also, if you haven't understood something thus far, don't worry. Not everyone understands everything. Just ask for clarification. That's what we're here for. You should have heard me asking for mark clarification when I first started being trained in web stuff and trying to go and figure out, what is this standard? All right, so while we wait for folks to either unmute or type, depending upon I still have questions for you, so I'm not letting you go, Andrew,
I mean,
until so say so something you didn't do, which I was delightfully surprised at, is that you didn't work with kind of these unique identifiers
mhm.
in the sense of kind of the International Standards Organization. Not that, I mean, you use standards all the time, but as far as books and the idea that they have a unique number, and this has a whether it's the ISBN or whether it's the OCLC number, or whatever number it is that they're like, this is this in this format. There are some such numbers for things. Is there a reason why you touched on it briefly, but is there a reason why you didn't go that route? That you just found that the title and author was a better fit?
It really just came down to, too often it wouldn't match results. In the context of the extension here, what I was finding was there was a lot of cases where it would search for the ISBN and would get back that result, and I would stop.
Yeah.
And while that would return back a result, that wasn't necessarily the best result for the user,
Yeah.
because maybe that particular ISBN was the one that was fully checked out, but the library actually had several copies of another edition, maybe a newer edition or an older edition that was equally good, or maybe they had other things that were useful. Maybe the audiobook would pique the user's interest or anything else like that. And so I made the conscious decision to move away from using those as the search criteria because it was too constrained and it wasn't really meeting the needs of what the users wanted. The users really, when I was thinking about it and when I was using it myself, is I didn't care that it was this copy of the book or this particular printing of the book. I wanted a version of it. Maybe I'm happy with a hardcover version versus a softcover version or a paperback. It that was up to the user to make a distinction on what they really wanted there. But the ISBN would really lock them into exactly the thing they were looking at. Particularly if you're on Amazon, it's exactly the item that you're looking at on there. And then not every item on Amazon has an ISBN. Some of them are their boot codes. And so, those are the items that aren't available. And so I was going to have to support title and authors effectively anyway, because title alone wasn't enough of a search. And in some cases, different catalogs have different capabilities where they can only search by one field at a time. So I just wanted to generalize the overall approach and implementation that I was going with there.
No, that makes total sense. So we all know if we're searching things, right? Home Depot has things named differently and categorized differently than Ace Hardware, for example. I'm just to throw out two examples of common places that sell tools, not to mention the different rental companies that may exist. Like your local rental company will have a different way of cataloging those tools as well. So if you were to sit and search for a tool in your area, I'm sure some of those things would come up, probably the larger corporate things. Who for whatever reason are ranked higher on the search engine.
Mhm.
So if one were to mimic what you have done with library extension with things, in a way you would need to take a look at all those different sites and figure out how to identify a hammer, right? And figure out that name of a hammer, whether or not it was called a ball peen or whatever, to use your extension later, and then to look it up from your local tool library in the same way. Which again, there's no guarantee because there's some softwares where it is really easy. Jean, thank you. But other times they're working with a different system. Other time it's a list of things in a book. So that's not going to work at all. So, but that would be that would be the way your system works. But
Yeah, I
in a
would,
theory
depending
with
on what it
tools.
is, it might be easier going from what you're looking at
Yeah.
because you're in this exploratory. There aren't fewer pre-existing systems that are in place. It sounds like there's more opportunity to build out what is useful and what is valuable for the
Yeah.
to be able to do these lookups and then share that system with others. And so it sounds like from the ground up, there's more opportunity to be able to support these ideas of effectively what's a semantic search, right? Things that are similar but are named differently and being able to do those lookups and everything else in the system.
Well, so if I meet someone who's an amazing funder,
Mhm.
and would you or would you be interested in working with someone? And I haven't met anyone. This isn't a lead. I'm just saying, just good, always good to know in case you never know. Um, in case someone wanted to develop kind of a search engine for tools, would you be open to chatting with anyone about this
I,
based off of your system?
It's fun. Networking is a lot of fun in that
Yeah,
regard. It's an
yeah,
opportunity to learn and explore a new space. So I talking about it, I would love to. Absolutely.
right, right.
There's you know coming up with designs and thoughts and imagining it is always a lot easier than actually having to do it. I will say, leading back to our earlier discussion about AI, that's where I've found AI be useful is for like if I know exactly what I want to do
Yeah,
mechanically, do some of it much faster than I can by hand, particularly
yeah.
as the system's grown. Having it do certain things and greenfield projects are wonderful internal tools. It's fantastic. Um, and just getting going and learning how to do things as long as things are driven and in my opinion so far, uh, directed closely because otherwise you have to know where you're trying to get to. It's one of those things where it's not going to build it well for you if you don't know where you actually what good looks like to start off with.
Yeah, that's been I actually similar story to you. I hadn't used it very much either, but then in my work I wanted to make sure I understood it. And so I played around with it. I was like, "Oh, I learned a lot this past few months
Mhm.
on what it does well and what it confidently does not do well."
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, for a lot of things, it can be helpful. You just have to
Yeah.
know what you're actually looking for in a lot of cases, or how to revalidate anything that it sends back your way. My team and my day job, we have a fun game where every day we have a stand up as part of our daily process. And the very last thing is we have an instruction that we send out to the AI to say, tell me something interesting that happened on this day. It can't be, battle related because every day has some battle related things. And then provide me with a link that actually works. And 80% of the time, the links don't work. But that's part of our game is to like figure out how close does it actually get to providing actual, real, truthful things, and how often is it even right? And 80% of the time the links don't work, and at least that number of times the event in question doesn't actually fall on the day, or it's made some aspect of it up. So it's really interesting seeing that.
Absolutely. And I have a feeling a lot of this is going to change too,
Mhm.
as it always does.
Exactly. What's true today is not necessarily going to be true tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. That's accurate. All right, so team, any questions for Andrew? Andrew, again, thank you so very much for taking this time. Please, folks, don't hesitate to unmute, ask a chat question. I know it can seem daunting to kind of think about these larger what if questions. But at the same time, how great that such a tool exists. And I'm sure you thought, hey, what if, and you just had not the training and knowledge to figure it out,
To do it, yeah, and
which is
enough
awesome.
of a desire to share. So.
Yeah, which is huge, which is huge. Gosh, you're gonna make me just ask the questions, huh? All right. Well, so actually, you've almost answered all of my last question for you, Andrew, is what didn't I ask that I should have asked? Because, based off of especially in the sense of scaling the sharing economy. So whether it's with books and, we're all folks here, as librarians or folks in this world, what else can we do to, what else should have I have asked you about this that you would like people to know?
I'll share some of the other things that are interesting challenges, which really fall down to like trust of something like the tool, right? One of the challenges is in order for the tool, the extension to work well, it requires remarkably broad permissions on the web browser.
Yeah.
I'm happy to get into the technical details. I don't like the permissions at all. I wish I could narrow them
Hmm.
down. But the ability to make some of these requests out, particularly to the various library catalogs, um, requires, for anyone that might be familiar with the term CORS, it requires some working around the CORS restrictions that a browser establishes.
Yep.
And that the only way around that was to have these ridiculously broad permissions on the browser. But that introduces this level of risk because now I have to provide a product that users have to provide deep trust into because it does have this ability to effectively look at any page that the user is on. And so there's the trust element is a really challenging one. And the browser extension ecosystem is one that is rife with untrustworthy characters. And any number of requests that I get for, hey, would you want to earn a few extra dollars if you just throw this little piece of code in your extension for me? Well, we'll make it work for each other and everything else. So it's
Wow.
a challenging ecosystem to establish and retain trust in. And a lot of authors, if you're on any of the mailing lists, particularly the ones for the developers lists, they all say the same thing. Like the application stores don't seem to do a particularly good job of weeding out these nefarious characters. And the nefarious characters seem to getting an upper hand while the good guys are always getting slapped down for the little things that they do. So it's a challenging ecosystem to work in the first place. And so most of the people that are doing work on this have really good intentions. But there's enough bad actors up there that just like I'm sure in everything you do every day, you encounter similar sorts of things. It's just the reality of the world. Like there's a lot of good, and then there's a few bad. And so it's a challenging one to work in there. So um, I see the question about
Yeah.
communicating more commitment to maintaining that trust. All I can really do is continue to have my statements on the website as best as I can, and I don't do a great job of reinforcing that. Having outreach like this, if I did more outreach like this and be able to have more advocates in the general space, that would be helpful. And really depend on the reviews that people do give me there, and depend on those being as accurate as possible, and not overstepping the trust ever. So it's one of those things where I don't want to ever have the extension do something that's outside of the scope of what it's intended to. It was intended to do effectively one thing, and I try to only have it do that one thing. And so even expanding capabilities, when I look at doing that now, I'm trying to do that through an adjacent extension as opposed to changing this one, because this one has a very specific purpose and a very specific approach toward doing it, as opposed to trying to put all of my utensils and make this be the entire kitchen sink and everything else. This is going to do one thing. It's going to do one thing well as much as possible.
Well, for what it's worth, Andrew, when I was reading up on you before I messaged you, I was actually really impressed with your responses to people. Rarely, especially in this time where you have to agree before you actually get to look at terms and conditions, you know, I looked and well, why do I have to do this? I have to do this because I have to ask for these permissions for that. And actually, even just that level of explanation that you posted really, I thought was lovely and heartening. So, also, especially since you're doing this for fun in your spare time for the public good.
Yeah.
So,
Some people
um,
call me crazy for doing this for fun, but
I
absolutely.
was, well, I mean, we're a bunch of like minds in different ways here. so I think we're yeah, you've got a posse in a different way. Um but I just want to say thank you from all of us. When I put this out on yeah, I can just say we're a bunch of nerds. Yep, it's true. um uh, when I put this conversation out on the two listservs I told you about, I got a bunch of messages back just saying, "I love library extension." So you have a huge fan club out there for what it's worth, and so thank you for that. Thank you for
I
taking the
can
time today.
I can turn around and make requests. If there
Yeah,
are things that don't work, please let me
yeah,
know. I do.
amazing.
Well, I can't always get to all of them, but if I am made aware of them, or different things that would be useful, or like if there are perspectives that I'm not aware of, I've taken for the most part a perspective of, as someone who wants to read books.
Yeah.
um, I wanted to do this. But I know that there are entire communities out there that are adjacent to that specific need. There's the use in library collection development, which I've heard a lot of folks like to use the extension for. There's homeschooling parents that seem to find it incredibly useful. There are all of these subgroups that find it useful for slightly different reasons. If I can learn more about that, and I should do more outreach. So that's a little bit on myself as well, absolutely. But since I have this venue to solicit some input, if there are things that you would like to see, please let me know. I definitely do keep lists of these things. Some of those lists have gotten very long, but I do take all of that feedback and try to think about where I can integrate it into the overall product. And as long as it is in keeping with the theme of the tool, I'm happy to try and do that.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. So again, we'll message you if
Mhm.
there's things that come up. We'll spread the word to tell other people too. But in the
I
meantime,
am
know
the
you.
singular person behind all of it. So
That's
there's not,
amazing. This is
I always
amazing.
enjoy hearing that, people believe there's a team, but it really is just myself right now for it. That might beg another question. Why haven't I open sourced this? And that's a great question. And there's kind of two main lines of thought from my perspective. One is my code is awful in this case, and it would be embarrassing to put out some uh, the underlying pieces. It's also undergone changes over the years. It's written in this kind of obscure dialect called CoffeeScript, and it's
Mhm.
really hobbled together with some terrible scripts that only exist on my computer at this point. And so I've slowly tried to actually make it something that I could run and do so in a consistent way in other places. But it's a little tied to my environment right now, and I'm still trying to pull that apart. Um, and then a different reason that kind of exists is insofar as the open source community can be wonderful, it can also be an incredibly mean and cruel community. And so my code, admittedly not being as pretty in some cases, or there was decisions that I made on the bus because that's the time that I had to be working on it back in the day, that I would not make again today, or I've learned better approaches. Um, there would just be more disillusionment surrounding that than would be value being gained in some cases. So maybe someday I will get to it. I certainly have that as a high hope that I will clean it up sufficiently, and maybe now I can use tools like AI to get it to a happier state where I'm willing to do that. It hasn't been for any other reason other than it's kind of the raw code isn't always the nicest layout, or people be like, this is really stupid. I probably would totally agree with them in that regard. Why I took particular implementations here. So
Well, I mean, I think you're seeing agreement here. Jean said it
the
takes a
management
lot of
is
work to manage an open source project. So yeah, I mean, this is huge. Um, so thank you for doing what you have done. And kudos to you for that. And with that, we are at time. And I was gonna say we have a few folks who are saying, "Oh my gosh, I have to leave," but thank you so, so much. Um, and again, yes, I'm getting a couple. Oops, a couple got sent straight to me. So, but the theme is the same. Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time for both to make this and then to talk to us. We will post this on the Lot Mutual Aid listserv. I'll send it to you when I do. It might not be tonight because I also have a kiddo who's it's opening school thing I have to go to. But I hope we both have a good time at those things. And if you ever make it out to the other coast, don't be a stranger, okay?
Thank you so much. Absolutely.
All right. Take care and be well. Thank you so much.
Again, so much for the opportunity to chat with everybody.
Oh, we appreciate it. Bye-bye.